Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com.
Hey guys, so it's Sunday, kind of a dreary, rainy, nasty day. Temperatures bottomed out on us again. It's not that bad out here, but compared to yesterday and the glory of what we had then, it's a little different. It for sure smells like spring out here. It smells like ozone, which is kind of cool. But it is church day for me, and so how does a Gnostic, Hermeticist, heathen more or less praise? And the way is by paying tribute to those who came before and the things that came before in many ways. And so I know you have heard me talk about the Fleenor peach and John Fleenor and Abraham Fleenor in the past. There's a couple of the Fleenor peach trees, obviously dormant for the moment. But one of my favorite stories about the Fleenor peach, there's two versions of its origin. The first version is that Abraham Fleenor was an orchardist and brought seeds and bare root trees of this particular brandy making peach, this white clingstone, to Washington County, Indiana, from Washington County, Virginia, and potentially before that from Frederick County, Maryland. Could be true. The version that Abraham gave in a newspaper article later in his life was that, and he doesn't specify which of those three counties or three states this happened in, but that a traveling tramp, that would be something like a hobo basically, who had no money, needed somewhere to stay one late winter's night, and he had no money. So he offered Abraham two stones of this Fleenor peach, and Abraham planted them, and that's where this Fleenor peach came from. I like that story. I like those traveling gifts, that idea of better angels that reward you for doing the right thing. So we're going to pay that back today to Mr. Abraham Fleenor. We'll turn the camera around. We'll see if we can find a couple stones here on the ground. I planted a lot of them this year because this thing is going into a slow food Arctic taste. And I wanted to be able to make sure that I had trees and stones and stuff to be able to offer to people that are going to want them in the future. So I'll put my glasses back on so I can see here. I was out here yesterday. I know there's several stones out and about. There's one right there. And let's see. I don't think that one's viable. I want to try to find a couple that are viable. So there we go. There's two. And I suspect both of those are viable, more than likely. So we're gonna pocket those. Then we're gonna travel a little ways north of here, up past Salem, Indiana, and visit the grave of Abraham Fleenor. Well, here we are, the Winslow Cemetery. Been a little while since I've been to this necropolis, little tiny necropolis, really. But no better time than now for a little cemetery lore and superstition. So a couple things. When you're in a cemetery, you never remove your hat because that gives spirits a place to attach to. It's also wise to carry some iron in your left pocket, an old nail, something of that nature, or to wear a red ribbon inside your shoe. These things all ward off anything attaching itself to you. There's a lot of other cemetery superstitions, graveyard superstitions, etc. They tend to apply more to truly graveyards than they do consecrated cemeteries. Cemeteries are associated with religious and holy places, and so therefore they're consecrated. Graveyards are not. So anyways, let's walk up in here and see if we can find what we're looking for. Also, I should mention, this is also the cemetery where Mr. Bailey Bowling, who we talked about before, who committed suicide after some excise agents showed up at his farm in South Boston. We're not too far away from Suicide Cave, where his body was found after he supposedly killed himself, and this is also where he is interred at without a headstone. In those days, you committed suicide, oftentimes they didn't give you a headstone. Excuse me, my friends, I'm sorry. All right, here we have it. So this place is fairly well taken care of by the families. A lot of the families out here, the Haddabaws, the Fleenors, the Hopkins, the Nicholsons, the Callaways. These are people that all came to Indiana really, really early, and their families are all still in this region. So they do a good job of taking care of this place, replacing old stones from time to time and things of that nature with new stones, which has been done at some point in time for both Nancy and Abraham Fleenor. Turn the camera around and you'll see here where they're at. Abraham's on the left, and yeah, on my left, and Nancy is on, might be backwards. Maybe Abraham is on my right and Nancy's on the left. It's hard to tell from the old stones, but so here lies the grave of the gentleman responsible for introducing the Fleenor peach to Indiana distilling lore and history, and we hope to reintroduce that brandy to people in the future. And so today, just like in Abraham's story, a tramp has brought him 2 Fleenor peach stones in remembrance and thank you. We're going to put them right down there. Pretty cool stuff, I think. That's how you honor and remember the past and the ancestors and what people have done. And that is the only form of immortality that exists in this realm that we call Earth. I'm out here, I might as well show you a couple other cool things. So oftentimes I'll talk about zinky stones. These are made out of actual zinc. So here's a little one. Obviously died very, very young, but truly made of zinc. Another one just like it. Now the cool thing about these in distilling lore, the larger monuments often had screw-on panels, and moonshiners would often unscrew those panels and use that as a drop point for liquor. I've wondered many times in these old cemeteries with big zinkies in them, how many of them still have a jar of liquor or some money hidden back in them. Also, in the older section of the cemetery here, one of the older sections, and a lot of community names in here. You come up on this section here, over here by where obviously Abraham and his wife are, you get a lot of Fleenors in here. These people, these families all stayed in one of 2 forts in the early days when a lot of the problems with the Native Americans were going on. Fleenor's Fort and Haddabaw Fort. I think there might have been a Denny's Fort as well, if I remember right. I'd have to go back and look though. But great many Fleenors buried here, obviously. These old stones have seen better days. Some of these, I think, what they'd call settler stones, stuff like this, which may or may not have ever had any carvings on them, potentially, but from the very, very early days of the county and community. Now here's another interesting family, the Pughs. So the Pughs were tied into Ezekiel Logan. Ezekiel Logan was a early distiller, state senator, state representative, and the local constable / sheriff down in these parts of the county. And the Pughs had married into his family, and his old distillery, and I believe it would be George D's father here, maybe, I may be wrong on that, maybe his uncle, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look, but he actually inherited that old distillery, and apparently it was a fairly large concern located on down this valley down in here where now Delaney Creek Park is at, also the site of the last Native American here in the county, Chief Delaney. That's actually where he lived at. Here's another interesting thing, that Bailey Bowling I was telling you about. So if you pay attention in the cemetery, even though it is very well taken care of, there are a number of unmarked graves here. Spaces where there's stones that are skipped, or a few of those old metal markers like that where people couldn't afford stones or whatever. But there's a number of Bowlings sort of in this general vicinity here. Here's an Elmo R. Bowling, Harley H. Bowling. Goes into the Kellys there. There's some Bowlings over here. And I'd have to look up the name of Bailey's mom and dad. I did a bunch of research on that years ago. There's a mini Jane bowling back there. And you'll see there's empty space next to that flat headstone. There's also Margaret and Daniel L. bowling over here, and an empty space to the other side of that as well. So we don't know for sure where Bailey's at, but he's here somewhere. Alright, so here's another interesting place, and it's actually on a road called Seldom Seen Road, believe it or not. It's kind of fun coming down in through there. Some ruts in there, but this is the Pew Cemetery. You might remember I mentioned those pews just a little bit ago. This is their main cemetery, but there is an Indiana folk hero buried here. Actually, a couple of them. And you can see the Washington County Cemetery Commission back in 2015. They set this stone in commemoration. Micajah Calloway and Archibald Johnson. So early pioneers of Washington County, Indiana. Mr. Calloway was one of those salt boilers of Daniel Boone's that got abducted by the natives. Really had a rough time of it for a hard time, and he was considered a feared hunter in this world. The Native Americans feared him, the whites feared him. There's some potential conspiracy stuff behind his reaction to his abduction, but won't get into that here, but just show you around here in a second. So another piece of cemetery superstition, graveyard superstition, you always ask before you enter, and then you wait a second and you listen and see if there's any positive and or negative response. It's a cool place in here. Definitely got a feeling to it. Ain't no doubt about that. Some Wilsons, Spurgeon. Got some graves back here in this corner too that are obviously seen better days. Lots of unmarked in here, clearly. These old cemeteries too, you got to remember there was a lot of cholera in the mid-1800s, and sometimes you'll see a huge area not marked by stones at all, but where you can tell there's graves or even a mass grave. And sometimes in these old cemeteries they'll be marked in Indiana as area of unknown dead, essentially, and those are typically cholera or typhoid graves. Glass hiding out down here, kind of interesting. It's interesting, this one is face the opposing direction. Yeah, face the opposing direction. That's very interesting. There's usually a meaning to that. A lot of times the dead are buried facing east, but not always. Not in every case, for sure. Some more of those pews here. All right. Here's the legend himself, Micajah Calloway. Don't know if you can read that or not, but Micajah Calloway died April 11th, 1849, I believe. Aged 93 years. Held prisoner by Indians 5 years and 2 months after being abducted from the Salt Licks in Kentucky. Cool stuff. I always leave a little offering too, so I'm going to probably leave Micajah here a cigarette. It may not be his preferred form of tobacco, but something he would have been familiar with anyways. Sorry, I unfocused my camera there for a second because I was looking at the ground here, but yeah, I'm going to leave him a little something here. These old stump stones were usually carved by the woodsmen of the world. Really intricate, really cool. You can see that vine, the mushrooms, the broken branches. Really neat stuff. Another Callaway here. Born 1806. Died in 1890. John Callaway. A lot of the pews are right over here. Little corner of the yard here is a little cooler, and it could be from the trees, but oftentimes I say the hedges have secrets if you got ears to listen and you're able to hear. Another one of those local heroes buried here. Archibald Johnson, Continental Line, Revolutionary War. Really cool stuff. I thank him for his service for sure, without a doubt.